There may be original work beneath this.
After 15 years, we may be just a few feet above original work.
There may be a second money pit on Oak Island, and the evidence for it has been sitting 138 feet underground, undetected, for centuries. They drilled near the garden shaft and pulled up 12 feet of core from a 30-foot interval. The rest was void. No rock, no clay, no gravel, just empty space in the dark. For more than 200 years, the assumption has been simple. One pit, one target, one treasure. Dig straight down and you'll find it. But the evidence is stacking up against that story, and it's stacking up fast. The money pit may not be one pit at all. Two chambers, not one. They call it Aladdin's Cave, roughly 30 feet long, sitting 160 feet below the surface, about 30 feet southwest of the garden shaft. It's a man-made void with identifiable access points, and it's enormous by any underground standard on this island. We're talking about a cavity large enough to walk through, carved out of the earth at a depth that would have required serious engineering even by modern standards, but it's not alone. Season 11 of The Curse of Oak Island confirmed the existence of two separate chambers beneath the island. Not one large cavity that someone misread on a scan. Two distinct underground spaces, offset from each other, each with its own structural characteristics.
If the tunnel predates the shaft, it makes the tunnel far more interesting than just finding a previously unknown tunnel.
Marty Lagina put it plainly when he described what they were finding as multiple offset chambers with varying amounts of treasure. That single phrase rewrites the entire search strategy. If there's one vault, you dig one hole. You find it or you don't. The math is simple. But a distributed system is a completely different problem. Multiple chambers means multiple targets, spread across different depths and different lateral positions. It means whoever built this didn't put everything in one place. They deliberately split it up. They engineered redundancy into the design. The same way a military operation distributes its assets, so a single point of failure can't wipe out everything. That's not the behavior of someone hiding a single chest in a hurry. That's the behavior of someone running a large-scale logistical operation. And it raises an uncomfortable question for every treasure hunter who's ever sunk a shaft straight down into the money pit area over the last 2 centuries. What if the thing they were looking for was never directly below them? What if it was offset 30 feet to the side, sitting in a chamber connected by tunnels they didn't know existed? The two-chamber discovery didn't just double the search area, it fundamentally changed the geometry of the problem.
So the hope is that once we get down 50, 60 feet, we'll be able to drill horizontally, vertically.
Every previous expedition assumed the treasure was stacked vertically, layer after layer, directly beneath the surface depression. Dig deep enough and you win. But if the real architecture is lateral, if the chambers are offset and connected by horizontal tunnels, then going straight down was always the wrong strategy. 200 years of vertical digging may have been 200 years of missing the point. The tunnel network nobody expected. The tunnels are what tie the chambers together, and the tunnels are what make the skeptics nervous. At 95 feet deep, the team found an east-west tunnel system confirmed across 3 separate boreholes. That's not an anomaly in one data point. That's a pattern, repeated and verified from different drilling positions. Then, between 99 and 103 feet, they hit a second tunnel void. Another passage, slightly deeper, running through the same underground network but at a different level. 2 tunnel systems at different depths, connected to 2 chambers at different positions. This is layered infrastructure. Wood recovered from around 80 feet was sent for carbon dating. It came back with a date of 1735. Let that land for a moment, 1735. The original money pit discovery is traditionally dated to 1795, when 3 teenagers supposedly noticed a circular depression in the ground. That means the wood in these tunnels was cut, shaped, and placed underground a full 60 years before anyone on the surface claims to have found anything unusual. Whoever built these tunnels was here first, and they weren't digging a simple hole to drop something into. They were building permanent underground infrastructure, the kind that takes planning, labor, and time. Then there's borehole CN 12.5. This is the drill hole that produced 12 feet of solid core from a 30-foot interval between 138 and 168 feet. The other 18 feet of that interval? Gone. Open space. At that depth, in this geology, open space doesn't happen by accident. Not in intervals that clean. Not without someone removing the material. The chemical analysis from the Spooner samples added another dimension. Traces of gold and silver showed up in the material. Palladium appeared in the tunnel wood itself. These aren't common elements you'd expect to find distributed through underground timbers on a Canadian island. Gold and silver traces suggest prolonged contact with precious metals. Palladium is rarer still, associated with specific metallurgical traditions. And its presence in the wood raises hard questions about what was stored in or moved through these passages over time. The tunnel network isn't a single corridor leading to a single room. It's a system with multiple levels, multiple branches, and chemical signatures that point to precious metal storage. The dating, the chemistry, and the borehole data all converge on the same conclusion.
I do believe that material, whatever was contained within it, has fallen to a far greater depth.
Someone engineered this well before the 1790s, and they did it at a scale that implies serious resources and serious intent. The evidence beyond the pit. If the underground story is compelling, the surface evidence adds another layer entirely. Lot 5 has produced a collection of artifacts that simply don't belong on a remote island in the North Atlantic. A chest clasp, the kind used to secure shipping containers in the colonial era. A Tudor period coin that predates any known English settlement in the area. What may be a Roman coin, though that identification remains contested. A barrel strap, a keg top. Taken individually, any one of these could be explained away as an isolated find, carried there by currents or dropped by a passing ship's crew. Taken together, they paint a very different picture. They look like the debris of a staging area, somewhere goods were organized, sorted, and prepared for movement underground or offshore. The artifacts aren't treasure themselves. They're the operational residue of people handling treasure. And they're concentrated in one area, which suggests that location had a specific logistical function. Over on Lot 8, a copper tube was recovered that may have contained parchment. If confirmed, that's a purpose-built document container designed to preserve written records underground. Someone brought paperwork to this island and deliberately buried it. That's not the behavior of casual visitors or shipwreck survivors. That's deliberate, planned preservation of information someone expected to retrieve later. The ground-penetrating radar surveys have added even more complexity to the picture. At the cave-in pit, anomalies showed up at 82 and 91 feet. A linear anomaly at 60 feet appears to track toward the money pit area, suggesting a possible connecting structure. At Smith's Cove, a 7-meter anomaly sits beneath the surface, its nature still unexplained. And in the swamp, the so-called ship anomaly continues to resist easy explanation, showing a shape and density profile that doesn't match natural geology. None of these data points exist in isolation. The underground chambers connect to the tunnel network. The tunnel network dates to before 1795. The surface artifacts suggest organized human activity involving valuable cargo. The GPR anomalies suggest there's more structure underground than anyone has fully mapped. Each piece of evidence reinforces the others, and together they describe something far more extensive than a single buried vault with a single entrance. What Fred Nolan saw first. None of this would have surprised Fred Nolan. Not one bit. For decades, Nolan argued that the treasure on Oak Island wasn't concentrated in one location. He believed it was distributed across 11 or more sites around the island. While everyone else poured their energy and their money into the money pit, Nolan was surveying the rest of the property, mapping features, measuring distances, insisting to anyone who would listen that the real picture was bigger than the tiny patch of ground everyone else was obsessed with. In 1981, he identified what became known as Nolan's Cross. It's a pattern of large stones arranged in a deliberate formation stretching across the island's landscape. The stones are positioned with geometric precision, forming a cross shape that's far too regular to be accidental. At the time, the discovery invited skepticism. Rocks on the ground, easy to dismiss as coincidence or wishful thinking, but the precision of the layout and its sheer scale suggested intentional placement by people who understood surveying and geometry. Nolan took it as confirmation of his broader theory that the island was a designed landscape, not just a hole with a secret. He was particularly focused on the swamp, Nolan believed something significant was buried beneath it, and he was never shy about saying so. He once described what he expected to find there as chests of gold and jewels of unimaginable wealth. It was the kind of statement that made serious researchers wince. Too dramatic, too certain for a man working with limited data. But the story has turned in his direction. The team's own data is now aligning with Nolan's model, the two-chamber conformation, the distributed tunnel network running at multiple depths, the surface artifacts spread across multiple lots, the GPR anomalies popping up in locations far removed from the original money pit. All of it supports the idea that Oak Island's underground infrastructure isn't centralized around one shaft. It's spread out across the island, exactly the way Fred Nolan said it was for decades to anyone who would listen. He spent his career being treated as the outsider with the fringe theory, the guy with the rocks and the swamp obsession. But the current body of evidence suggests he may have been the one who got closest to understanding how this island actually works. Sometimes the person everyone ignores is the person who's actually paying attention. The sinkhole problem. Not everyone is convinced, and the skeptical argument deserves a fair hearing because it's not frivolous. Joe Nickel has made the case that the money pit is a natural sinkhole formed over limestone geology. No engineering required, no treasure depositors, no grand conspiracy, just water, time, and dissolving rock doing what they've always done in karst terrain around the world. In 1995, researchers from Woods Hole documented subterranean streams running beneath the island. Their finding offered a clean, straightforward explanation for the persistent flooding that has defeated every excavation attempt since the 1790s. The water isn't an ingenious booby trap designed by treasure engineers. It's just groundwater following natural channels through porous, fractured rock. The same thing happens in limestone regions everywhere. There's also the Sophia Cellars incident from 1878, when the ground on her property suddenly collapsed without warning. Skeptics point to it as evidence of ongoing natural subsidence across the island. If the ground is collapsing on its own in the 1870s, you don't need to invoke hidden architects to explain underground voids. Nature does that work for free. And then there's the broader strategic argument. Every time the search expands, every time new anomalies are found in new locations, the skeptics see confirmation of something other than treasure. They see sunk cost fallacy at work. The idea that after 230 years and hundreds of millions of dollars invested, the search keeps expanding not because there's genuinely more to find, but because no one involved can psychologically afford to stop looking. The expansion of the search zone becomes its own justification, an ever-widening circle of maybe. It's a reasonable argument. It deserves to sit on the table alongside everything else, but it doesn't account for everything. Natural sinkholes don't produce tunnels confirmed in 3 separate boreholes at 2 different depth levels. Limestone dissolution doesn't leave behind wood that carbon dates to 1735, and groundwater doesn't deposit traces of gold, silver, and palladium in underground timbers. The skeptical model explains the flooding, some of the voids, even the cellars collapse, but it can't account for the engineering, the chemistry, or the dating. The sinkhole theory works beautifully right up until you have to account for the things that sinkholes can't build. And that gap between what nature can explain and what the evidence actually shows is exactly where the real mystery lives. For 230 years, the story of Oak Island has been told the same way. One mystery, one target, buried somewhere below, waiting for the right person to finally dig deep enough. But the data tells a different story now. 2 confirmed chambers, a tunnel network that predates the official discovery by 6 decades, surface artifacts scattered across multiple lots suggesting organized activity, GPR anomalies that extend far beyond the original search area. The money pit singular is giving way to something plural, something distributed, something engineered at a scale that the earliest searchers couldn't have imagined, and the latest ones are only beginning to map. The question isn't just what's buried on Oak Island anymore. It's who had the resources, the knowledge, and the motivation to build all of this. And if you want to dig into that question, we broke down the Portuguese evidence and what it could mean for Oak Island's origin story. That video is worth your time.